Navigation is great if you can follow linear features and you've got plenty of way markers. But before you start off, you've got to know north. Unfortunately, there are 3 norths. There's true north, where the North Pole is. There's grid north, where the grid lines on the map point to north. And there's magnetic north, where the compass points to. True north and grid north are fixed. Unfortunately, magnetic north isn't. It varies from place to place and time to time. At the moment, in UK, grid north and magnetic north are virtually the same. You will probably have a different grid magnetic angle where you live. But it's fairly easy to determine from your map. And in the examples we are using, we're going to have a grid magnetic angle of 10 degrees west, and later examples using a grid magnetic angle of 20 degrees east. When you start off, or you reach a way marker, set your compass to north. You do this by moving the vessel to allow for grid magnetic angle, in this case 10 degrees to the west. If we place the side of the compass next to the north-south line and get the red in the shed, the map will be accurately lined up with the ground. So if we have a hill in front of us on the map, there will be a hill in front of us on the ground. If there's a lake to the left on the map, there will be a lake to the left on the ground, and so on. If we wish to move from A to B on a compass bearing, we place one edge of the compass on A and B. Then we rotate the bezel so that the north-south lines in the compass rose match the north-south lines on the map. Once we've rotated the compass rose, we now have a bearing, but this is a grid bearing. To convert it to a magnetic bearing, we add our 10 degrees grid magnetic angle. We do this by moving the compass rose 10 degrees. As the grid magnetic angle is 10 degrees west. We now have our compass set up in the right direction to move on the ground. Once you have your bearing, choose a landmark and set off walking towards it. If you haven't got enough landmarks, or there's barriers in between, then use people to act as landmarks. You can organise a signal to get them to move left or right, to stay in the right line, and then follow that line. If you take a bearing with your compass and you want to plot it on the map, you have to adjust the grid magnetic angle. In this case, you turn it 10 degrees clockwise to change magnetic grid. Similarly, with an east grid magnetic angle, the compass will have to be turned clockwise to compensate for the difference. For example, a grid bearing of 36 degrees with a 20 degrees east grid magnetic angle will give you a 16 degree magnetic bearing. A magnetic bearing of 120 degrees, magnetic angle of 20 degrees east, will actually be 140 degrees grid. Before you get out there and get training because you know it makes sense and it serves you well, a couple of tips. Don't use a compass with a large bubble. I've used it just to make illustrations easy. The methods we've used works with grad and mils, but stick to one system at a time. It's good to use a bearing to get to a linear feature. If you need to, sit down and draw the diagram to work out which way the variation's going to affect your calculations. But remember, GMA West, compass bearing is best. GMA East, compass bearing is least.